Hello and welcome to an Everyday Canines video. In this episode of Distance Handling 101 Foundation Skills, we're going to be looking at adding a cue to the work we've already been doing with the cone. So the goal of this exercise is we're going to finally add a word into what we've been teaching the dog to do, which is to drive out to the back of a cone. We're now going to add a word to it. So ultimately we can ask the dog to do that on the verbal cue alone. So that's the goal of this exercise, linking the behaviour to a verbal cue. The purpose of this exercise is so that we can build on this and take away this verbal cue and transfer it ultimately to the back of a jump. So when I use my wrap cue, I transferred it from a cone to ask my dog to go to the back of a jump and turn tightly towards me. So that would be if, for instance, you wanted to send them around and do a front cross, or you needed them to turn really tight. It's not the same as when I want them to go over the jump and go long. So the behaviour when it goes to a jump is mimicking what we're doing on the cone. So if you imagine they go to the cone, they have to do quite a tight turn to come round. That is exactly what we're looking for when we move it on to a jump. The reason I teach this cue at all is firstly, it's good to have two different cues. A cue that means jump long on the round the back on a jump, and a word that means do a tight backside. It's very useful to have that. Secondly, when I'm doing sequencing, obviously a lot of the time I want to be in one place and my dog needs to be in a different place to start it. Rather than always set them up in a wait at a start, I might, for instance, say, send them on a wrap cue to the back of a jump so that I can use it as part of a sequencing. I may have 3 jumps, say for instance, and I ask them to wrap the first jump before doing the rest of the sequence. So it's another way of utilising a cue. It's very useful to have, especially if you're a distance handler. The more distance you can have the wrap cue on, the more you can achieve in sequences without always having to set your dog up in a start line wait. Because that in itself, if you have to go always to the start and set the dog up and then walk back to where you want, that can also be a lot of, depending on how mobile you are, that can be a lot of work. So this also means that you can get a running start. For instance, if you want to send your dog round, even in competition, people use this so that the dog will be moving at a start and give the handler a little bit of a chance to get ahead rather than starting in a static sit on wait or whatever. So that's what we're going to teach today, and now we're going to move on to the exercise. So we're going to start this exercise closer than where we finished up doing our cone. So obviously we were trying to get back to about 3 meters or more when we were doing this with the cone, but we're going to start this closer because we're now adding a verbal cue. So we're going to start this a little bit easier. We're not worrying about the distance at this point, we're more worrying about the action. So I'm going to start, get my dog ready, and there she goes. We're just going to warm up with what we've been doing. Stay under your nose, lovely, get it. So she knows what she's doing. Nice, get it. And because I'm closer, get it. Just get her nicely warmed up. Just repeating that behaviour. Good girl. Nice. Good girl. Okay, and stop there. Okay, so we just warmed up a little bit. Okay, now this time I've been doing that, throwing the food on the floor as we've been doing. Now I'm going to get my treat ball out, because this time I want to do it slightly different. So we've got the value for her going around that obstacle. Now this time when she goes around that around that cone, I'm going to use the word I want, and the word I want to use, just get that pie, it's on your feet. The word I want to use is wrap, and it can be a repeated cue, so it can be wrap, 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 to tell the dog to continuously wrap. As she's driving out, I'm going to say my wrap cue, and I'm going to reward just like I did before. But the important thing is, this time I'm not going to have her go back on herself. Okay, we were doing that when we were shaping value for the cone. So this time I just want her to do one wrap and then come back to me, and we'll start again on the same side. So I'll show you what I do, but with reward placement, I'm going to get her to come back to my side, and we're going to do it all on one side to begin with. So I'm going by left side, it's just my natural side I tend to go. Wrap, wrap, and I'm going to reward there. So she sees the visual reward, good girl, and she's going to come in. Wrap, wrap. So I'm letting her perform the action first before I put in the word. Why do I do that? Well, by doing that, by putting the action first, then the word, that helps her to link it. Wrap, wrap. Okay, and I'm doing that, and I'm bringing her back on this side. Why am I doing that? Because when we transfer this to a jump, I don't want her to be doing back and forth on a jump, do we? That would be back jumping. So I'm looking for her to do this once, then come back, as I would if it was a jump. So that's why we're now transferring this and doing this slightly differently. Wrap, wrap, okay? We've done that a few times. We've had her come back and reward. Obviously, we need to do the other side. You can do this in the same session, or you can do it in a separate session. Really depends on your dog and what you want to do. It's always good though to remember to do evens. So if you've done 5 on this side, which I think I've done 5 on this side, it's always a good idea to then switch to the other side. The important thing with the wrap cue is when you're actually using it in competition, the dog will always drive out on the side, to the side of the jump that you're at. So for instance, if that's the jump wing, sit, and there's another jump wing there, because I'm facing my dog is on this side, my left side, they're going to go to the left wing and take the left wing. If they're on the right side, they should take the right wing. That's what's important. That's why we're now starting to do this. So if I want him to go, her to go round and turn left direction round the cone, which would be clockwise, clockwise, he's going to be on the left. I wouldn't do that from here, because if I do that from there, it's a different cue. Okay, that becomes a freddle. This is important because when you're in a competition environment, you need to be as clear as possible when you're a distance handler, especially, about what something means. And we need to make sure that in this context, if I want him to go to this side, so this is a jump. If I want him to take the wing on the left of the jump, it's got to be a wrap cue. If it wasn't, if she could take even any wing, so if I said wrap and then she came across me and took a wing that was over there, that starts then to get confusing. That potentially makes dodgy lines for the dog, because I'm trying to be specific. I'm trying to set my dog up nicely for whatever's the next obstacle coming. I might not want them to go over to that wing, because that wing might be, when they come back on that line, they're going to be in the wrong place. Or it might be that there's another obstacle over there that makes it difficult for them to take if they do that. So we need to always know what do our cues mean and when to use them. So for me, the wrap cue means you take the back of the wing nearest on the side that the handler is. So if your dog on my left, you're going to take the left wing. If you're on my right, even if the wing is over there, you're going to take the right wing. Another way to think of it is that the dog is not going to cross the line between the handler and the jump to get to the back of the jump. So again, if you imagine there's another cone here, if I'm here, she's not crossing a line in front of me, good girl, get it, to get to the back of that cone. But if the cone was over there and I asked her to do the back, she would have to cut in front of me to do it. I can demonstrate this on one cone either. So this is a wrap cue, wrap, wrap, good girl. Now, if I say in, she should come across me and in. Pie, come here. In, in, in. She's not so good on them. If I had Swift, she'd be really good. So that's what I mean. That's the difference, okay? That's just something to bear in mind. When you're training this, the wrap cue means you're not cutting in front of the handler. You're going to the wing the handler is on. So if you're on the left-hand side, it's the left wing. If you're on the right-hand side, it's the right wing. So now I'm going to work on my right side. So this time she should go out there. If she crosses in front of me, good girl. I'm not going to reward it because I do not want her crossing in front of me. Okay, wrap, wrap. Okay, so I'm rewarding out there again and restarting her here. Wrap, wrap. Now, do you notice I'm not using an arm to guide her? She doesn't need an arm because we've done all that proofing. We want her to be able to do this on a verbal cue. Yeah, we may use arms when we ultimately get into running courses, but we don't want them to have to use that. So there's no arms. Wrap, wrap. She's performing the behaviour, and then as she performs the behaviour, I'm adding the cue. Wrap, wrap. Good girl. As your dog gets more confident with this, you can start giving the cue sooner and sooner. And what we ultimately want to work up to is the ability to say the cue and our dog to go out and do the behaviour. Now this will come at different times for different dogs, and some dogs will take longer to get that verbal cue. That is why it's important you don't use your arms. Dogs will very quickly pick up on the arm. If I was doing this all the time, every time I asked her to do it, do you see that? She'll do it on my arm signal. I've not taught her to do that, but she'll do it on my arm signal. What happens then when you try and do it on a verbal cue? Some dogs feel the need for that physical cue that they won't drive out and do it. You then give yourself a harder job in the long run to get that verbal cue in there. So that's why we're not using arms. Be very careful of your body as well. You might even be doing this. See, that'll cue her. We need to be so careful what we're doing because you want this on a verbal. If necessary, give yourself something to stand on that you have to stand on, put your arms behind your back, anything that means that you're not using your body as another tool to help signal this. So now what I want to do, once you get to the dogs to the stage where you've been putting that cue in, you may have to do a couple of sessions like that. Now I want to see if she'll do the cue and go to the back of the cone if I just use the word. So I don't want her to do that first. I want her to sit, say. I can have her in any position. Now I'm going to give the verbal cue and see if she will take the cone. Rap, rap, rap. Good girl. So now the verbal is coming before the action. And she has linked the verbal to the action. Rap, rap, rap. Yes, good girl. Okay, can she do it on the other side? Rap, rap, rap. Yes, good girl. I'm static. All I'm doing is the words, good girl. So now you can see, now this will take different times for different dogs. Okay, I can tell you now, Sparrow, my spaniel, she was so used to physical cues, she found it very hard to do this on a verbal cue. But other dogs that are used to you building on verbal cues early and used to shaping, they're likely to pick this up a lot quicker. So you go at the pace your dog needs. If you have your dog sitting there and you use the word and they don't do anything, okay, they're not ready for that. Go back, release the dog from whatever position they're in, and then go back to just the shaping game. So you're waiting for them to take the cone and then you say the word. It's just a case of building up and seeing, you're testing the understanding by using the word first. Sometimes you'll do that and you think my dog must have this, and you'll do that and the dog will go, what? So in which case you need to go back a stage and then give a couple of more sessions like we were doing with action before verbal, and then try again. So this is a testing phase. And now once of course they've got that, now ideally we only want them to do the cone when we ask them to, because on an agility course we only want them to do obstacles when we ask them to. We don't want them randomly taking obstacles, because if they do randomly take obstacles, then we're going to have a lot of off courses and eliminations. So now we've got to this stage, she's able to find the cone when I use my specific word. What now do we build on? Well, now we can challenge things slightly. We'll start challenging by adding more distance to the two objects. Now, if you remember when we were doing this and I said about shaping it, I said there comes a point where I feel there's enough distance. So for her, it was about 3-4 meters. You can probably get, even 5. And at that point, they start to really look where they're going. They're not so sure. And at that point, I said, that's when I want to have the verbal cue to give them that extra confidence. Now I've got that verbal cue and I'm telling them exactly what I want. We can see if we can add a lot of distance to this. See how much distance we can get. Can I get this to 10 meters and still send her out to that cone because I'm using the rap cue? So I think that's where we're going to test things next. Now we're going to challenge ourselves, and I'm going to try at different meterages how much distance I can get to that cone with Pi. Now I want to do this on a verbal cue, and I can tell you now this is the point where I get twitchy and I start putting in arm signals. It's just old habits die hard, but I really want to do this on a verbal cue only. So I'm standing roughly 5 meters away from that cone, and I'm going to see if she'll drive out to it. Ready, rap, rap, rap. Good girl. And to always be thorough when we're testing this, I want to test it on the right as well as the left to make sure that both sides are even. And also to see if there's any weakness, because you'll usually find what dogs are better on one side than the other. So Hannah's ready, rap, rap, rap. Good girl. Right, I'm going to go back to roughly, so this is roughly 7.5 meters, roughly. Rap, rap, rap. Good girl. Now, I can keep her going that continuous cue to keep encouraging her to drive out. With verbals, and with distance handling, it's always a good idea that sometimes you need to repeat your cues. If there's a long distance for the dog to drive, depending on the size of the dog, how driven they are, Swift, for instance, just get that for me, needs a lot of encouragement to go out a long way. She's more drivey, so she's not so bad. But even so, if I just keep those words going, that keeps telling them this is your job, this is what you're going to do. They're not going to get lost in that middle bit. And you can already see we've overcome that 4 or 5 meter barrier where she was starting to go, she was going, do I know what I'm doing anymore? Because she's got that verbal encouragement. Rap, rap, rap. Oh, see now this side, this tells me, this is good, tells me she's not so confident. So I'm going to just go 1 metre in. Ready, wrap, wrap, wrap. Good girl. So that tells me that side, she's less confident. Good girl. So I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to do this side again. Wrap, wrap, wrap. Good girl. Much better. Now, if you've got a weak side, you're going to repeat that side more often to improve it, just like anything. If that's the weakness, you need to fasten that much. So I know the left was really good, that was instant. So I'm going to do this one more time before I move on. And I'm just going to help make sure she's facing the right way. So I know she's over there. Okay, ready? Ready? Wrap, wrap, wrap. Good girl. Nice. So we're going to go back to the 10 metres. And I'm anticipating this could be quite hard for her on the right, maybe hard for her on the left. So let's see what happens. So 10 metres, that's the maximum distance you get between two obstacles. It doesn't mean that's the maximum distance you might want between an obstacle, between you and something they're doing a wrap. You could want more. But this is a good starting point to say, right, if I can get her to 10 metres, that's pretty sound. Okay, you ready? You ready? Ready? Wrap, wrap. Ah, see? I'm going to make sure I'm looking in the right direction as well. I looked over there and I've got a marker over there and she looked over there. So this is another thing to bear in mind. When there's more obstacles, it can get confusing for the dog where you want me to go. Okay. Wrap, 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 wrap. Oh, good girl. What you can't see, there's a jump wing over there to help me know where the 5 metre mark is, and she went and wrapped it. Now, I can't fault her for that because she wasn't sure where I wanted her to go, so she picked up that cone. I can't fault that because she did actually do what I said, she just didn't take the obstacle I wanted her to. So this is something to bear in mind, and it's maybe a case the same might happen on this side, she may pick that jump. So how do we correct this? Well, at this stage we can't so much because we're still learning. As we move forward and go on, we would then look at more discrimination. But at this stage, that is a perfectly logical choice for her to take, as would that wing be. So I can't fault her there. So what I might need to do, go, wrap. That's when you might need to start using an arm because she's picking up that wing. Okay, we're going to go forward. Ready? That one. Okay, wrap, wrap, wrap. Good girl. So you see I helped with my pointing. So that's where I want you to go. And that's only because I've got those there. If I was doing this, I'd take them all away. Wrap, wrap, wrap. Good girl. Good girl. So you can see, good girl. She just needed that extra help. So what I'm going to do is quickly take away the rest of these wings and then we'll come back and do a bit more. Okay, so I've taken away my extraneous wings. So now there should be only one option, which is the cone there. Because there were other wings there, I was having to use my arm to help, which is what you would do when you start to get the discrimination level. I don't want to do that. I want this to be all on a verbal. So now we're going to try again on the strong side. I'm about 7.5 again, just to give her another warm up because we've changed the scenario. And I'm going to see if I can get her to wrap out to that cone on the verbal. Okay, wrap, wrap, wrap. Good girl. Good girl. So now she's only got that to see. So now we're roughly 10. Ready? Wrap, 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 wrap. Good girl. She looked over there because she remembered there was a wing over there. Good girl. But she went, no, she wants that. And as I said to you before, if there was a jump over there and I was here and there was a jump there, it wouldn't be unreasonable for her to think that was where she needed to go. So this is where we might start having straight line cues, like a go cue, which means go straight ahead and then do something. That's a different story. Discrimination is the next thing up level. So we've done that on the left. Shall we give it one more go on the left? Ready? Wrap, 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 wrap. Good girl. Fab. Now let's see what she does on the right, because the right side is her weak side. Okay, you ready? You ready? Ready? Wrap, wrap, wrap. Good decision. Good girl. So when I say ready, ready, it's just a bit of a revving them up. Are you ready to go? Are you ready to go? That's all it is. I can do it. Let's try it without a ready, ready. Wrap, wrap. Ready. Wrap, wrap, wrap. Good girl. So you can see a slight lack of confidence on that side, but we're doing good. We've taken away other things. So when we're teaching it, and I did a bad thing, so you can see that was a mistake. I left obstacles that could confuse the situation. Okay, so you're seeing what you should not do. Wrap, wrap, wrap. Good girl. Nice, get it. Big party. She has done loads of work. Good girl. And she has now driven out on a verbal cue to 10 meters with nothing else to go around this cone. That is amazing. You know, good girl. She is not, I mean, we tend to sort of think, because we see a lot of collies doing this stuff automatically and other sort of breeds like that, we tend to think, well, all dogs can do it. But actually, for a lot of breeds, this is hard. Going out on a verbal cue, having that confidence to drive out, this is hard. For her, who's a Velcro dog, for Swift, he's a Velcro dog as well, this is hard. So that was awesome. She's now driven from 10 meters to round this cone. And it might seem simple, but this is one of your first stages towards getting a distance dog. You could keep doing this, and you know what? I quite like the idea of, I think maybe over the winter I'm going to be playing with this so I get further and further back and just see how far I can get back and get my dog to drive out. We do have to bear in mind that dog's vision isn't as clear as human vision. And there may come a point where she can't actually tell where the obstacle is without some further assistance, because their vision is different to ours. They don't have the same colour range and things can look fuzzier. But, you know, it's worth seeing. And also some breeds are more visual than others. Collies are very visual breeds. That's why they're good at picking up obstacles. Other breeds are more, they've been bred for centuries to be more into their losing their nose or whatever. But no, this is fantastic, and if you're getting this at 10 meters, that is a huge start on your journey to distance handling. I hope you've enjoyed this Everyday Canines video, and if you have, you might like to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you can click the notification button to know when the next videos are coming out. We're also on Facebook, and we have a website, and I hope to see you all again very, very soon.